Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dugout Daily. I'm Charlie, and I'm again joined by Dan. In this one, we are looking at whether Manchester City should go and sign one of two, or maybe both, of Forest's star midfielders, Elliot Anderson and Morgan Gibbs-White. According to the Daily Mail, we are tracking both of them, and of course, it could go down this season. Before we get going, we'll go to you, Dan. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, thank you, mate. Cheers for having me on.
No worries. Good to have you on again. We will start then with Morgan Gibbs White, of course, for his captain. There's been previous links as well. If you had to give us your brief thoughts on City signing him before we have a bigger look, what would your thoughts be on signing Gibbs White?
Yeah, no, it's a no from me. If I'll be very blunt about it, I just don't see it, and for the price that's been circulated, I just don't see it.
Yeah, of course. We'll look at a few pros and cons. He is a proven creative force with strong output this season, with 6 goals and 2 assists for a poor Nottingham Forest side, 27 Premier League appearances as well. He's played about 2,300 minutes, mostly starts, a high shot volume and chance creation, which is ideal for adding direct attacking threat and replacing or rotating with aging creative players. Of course, I don't know if I've ever said this on video, but I've definitely said to you, if we do lose Bernardo Silva in the summer, I think he would have to be replaced by at least 2 players to replace one Bernardo Silva. Could you see Gibbs White and Anderson being that duo that could replace Bernardo potentially?
No, no, I think Bernardo. Look, I can't exactly see it because I just Gibbs White isn't a physical player. He doesn't run a lot. He doesn't. He had a very good season last year under Nuno, but you know, I just don't see it. I think his injury record as well. If you're going to replace Bernardo Silva has missed a consistent. He's missed what
Yeah.
10 games in basically 10 years through injury. I don't see it. The only thing that I do see in Gibbs White here is potentially a price if he goes down. If Forest are relegated, and the fact that he's English for the UEFA quota. Apart from that, I just really you can write this signing off. In my opinion, I just don't understand it, and
Yeah.
he'd be nowhere near the capable of being anywhere near Bernardo Silva's replacement or in that package. In my opinion,
Yeah. He's got solid underlying stats, however, an XG of around 6.62, which is a slight overperformance, and he's consistently involved in transitions, which would fit City's fluid attacking style this season and potential partnerships with forwards like Jeremy Doku, Antoine Semenyo, Erling Haaland, etc. They believe it cost between 60 and 70 million pounds, with reports suggesting Forest would accept offers in this bracket. Of course, that could go down if Forest do go down. How likely that is, I'm not sure. Um, and of course, there will be pricier targets in the 10 position. Do you think City need a 10 in the summer, Dan?
no, I mean I was literally just saying to you. I think our number 10 position is going to be a really interesting watch over the next few years.
Yeah.
I think do we really need 3 number 10s? No. If we had Gibbs White, you'd basically be adding to that before, and I'll include at the minute, with Mikasa doing well at Leicester, out on loan. Will he be ready? Probably not. But again, he'd still be there in the future. And Gibbs White isn't, a signing that we're going to sign for 2-3 years. We'd probably be looking for him to settle into this team and stay with us for a few more years. You'd be looking probably at a 5-year deal that we give him. But yeah, I can't see us needing another 10. If it was Gibbs White to come in, he'd sort of have to settle into that probably 8 role. Maybe dropping into 6, similar to what Bernardo does. I think if you look at Cherky, who will probably be one of the best 10s in the world in the next few years, and you've obviously got Foden, who isn't going anywhere, and we know his qualities. So yeah. I just can't see us needing another number 10 in this team.
Yeah, definitely. And as you said there, we'd probably need more of an 8 or a 6. And Elliot Anderson fits into that mould more than Morgan Gibbs-White. Of course, we'll look at him a bit later on. As you also previously mentioned, he's an English international and would support the homegrown quota for the Premier League and Champions League. And in the past, City have been linked with Morgan Gibbs-White, which could make negotiations easier, and his playmaking, like his key passes, his dribbling and vision, improves the depth in transitional or rotation scenarios. Some cons then to this signing, which is probably more than the pros. He has a weaker defensive profile, which limits full alignment with City's high pressing and recovery, with a lower involvement in tackles and duels, which could create an imbalance in midfield against top sides. If we did sign Gibbs-White, which is a big if, let's be honest, could you see him starting in the big games like your Arsenals, your Liverpools, your Real Madrids in the Champions League, for example? What's your thoughts on that?
No, look, I think he's probably good enough to start. Yes, I mean he's there, but I just think with what we've got above us, above him in the pecking order. I mean you look at that number 10. You've got the likes of Foden in there, and let's say if Bernardo does leave, I think that'll be filled probably by a more defensive player. But if you're walking into a Champions League final, you've got Foden, who's been there and done that. Cherky, who's definitely good enough to go there and do it. And he's destined for things like that. If you move further back, is it starting with Rodri? No, Nico Gonzalez would probably start above him for that defensive player. Can Gibbs-White play on any of the wings? No. So yeah, I'd see him definitely as a similar sort of player that we have to Kovacic at the minute. It'd probably be more of that replacement, but again, I don't see that because Kovacic is an 8 and definitely more defensive player than Gibbs-White. So yeah, I just don't see this signing making much sense to me. I think he'd definitely be cover, and he'd definitely get minutes because of the amount of games we play. But the only reason he'd start in one of those games would be a heavy injury crisis.
Yeah, and of course he is 26 years old. He's probably very close to his peak, which means we'd have less time to develop him. I'm not sure how old Semenyo is, but I believe he's around that age. He might be slightly younger, actually. And then he overlaps in minutes with your likes of Fodens and Shirkies, like you've previously mentioned, which would reduce his minutes, of course. And we've previously had talks, apparently, with Forest about Gibbs-White. He signed a new contract in the summer as well, and there was links with him going to Tottenham in the summer. He could also join United. There's been links with him going there as well. And his wage expectations, I don't think are going to be very healthy for City either. Would you agree with that, Dan?
Yeah, I just think not only with the amount that we already have in the squad and realistically where he'd fit in, I think, if it's going to cost you 60 or 70 million, that's a lot of money. For a midfielder, he is close to his pomp, but, we know with Pep and the City's midfielders, and we saw it even, with Bernardo Silva, with Rodri, with seeing it with Nico Gonzalez. You're going to need a 22, 23-year-old probably to come in and have that time to develop, and when they hit peak, they're exactly how Pep wants them. And I just think, with his wages, again, ridiculous. We can pay it, obviously, there's not really much issue with City paying stuff. But I think, it's just the logic of it, it just doesn't make much sense from the financial point of view. And, you'd rather, if you are signing 2 players to replace Bernardo Silva, you're probably best saving that 70 million and 300 grand a week and going elsewhere and buying somebody maybe from abroad. you leave that job to the scouts. But I think Gibbs-White will be heavily, talked about and fantasized this brilliant player because he's English, because he's played here for years. And yeah, he had a brilliant year at Forest. Don't get me wrong, last year, and we're heavily linked to the point, where it actually looked like it was going to happen. I also think the other stumbling block in this is that we'd have to deal with Forest. We already saw what they did with Spurs, with the release clause, and obviously Mr. Marinakis doing his thing. I just think dealing with them would be similar to dealing with clubs like Napoli, where City just don't do it because of the almost mafia-like ran club, aren't they? I just think they're going to be a really, really, really tough one to negotiate with. And considering that we don't exactly need the player, I think that the City just shouldn't bother with the hassle of that and go elsewhere.
Yeah, of course, Elliot Anderson also plays for Forest, which isn't ideal in terms of that situation. And Ortega has recently joined Forest. Could that make negotiations easier? I'm not sure. We'll look at Elliot Anderson then and some pros and cons of his signing. He is highly versatile as a central or holding midfielder with the ability to cover multiple roles and offers excellent depth and rotation options with City's ongoing need for potential midfield reinforcements. Your Bernardo Silvas, your Rodris aren't getting any younger. He could potentially replace them. What's your thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, well, I'm totally the opposite to the Gibbs-White deal. I'm all for Elliot Anderson coming in, and as it looks increasingly likely that Bernardo Silva could leave, I've heard a bit of talk around the club that they could be giving him a new contract. How true that is, I don't know. If he is to leave as expected, I think Elliot Anderson should probably be the first name on the list that we'll be looking at. He's been a really standout player. He was highly rated at Newcastle in the youth. He wasn't old enough. He didn't exactly get a look in there. He's gone to Forest, and he's sort of become a totally different player. His versatility will really add to City. His ability to cover multiple positions, similar to Bernardo Silva, would be massive. The fact that he's young as well, that Pep can work with him, and we've seen how that can go. Very little players fail if Pep wants you at that age and developed.
Yeah.
So look, he is the player that we should be looking for. I think the only negative to this deal will be the fact that we'd have to deal with Forest and Marinakis, really.
Yeah, definitely. As you just mentioned there, he's still young, 23 years old to be precise, provides a long-term upside and is a homegrown eligible player as well, which would help with squad registration roles in both the Premier League and European football. He has impressive underlying numbers, including an XG contribution of around 2.26 and expected assists of around 3.05. And of course, he plays as a 6 or an 8 for Forest, which don't really contribute to goals like, for example, a Gibbs-White would. And consistent high ratings around a 7 and a 7.5. We'll have a brief look at his Sofa score. Of course, they played Liverpool at the weekend. Forest aren't the best team in the world, but if it'll load, we'll look at his Sofa score after this. So, to have a look at the average ratings, of course, both players play for the same side, starting with Elliot Anderson over the last 12 months since June. He's averaged between 7.5 and 7.1 with a 6.8, 6.9 and 6.7 towards the end of last season, where, of course, Forest were fighting for Europe and ended up getting Europa League football, even though they finished in the Conference League position. It makes good reading those average ratings for Elliot Anderson, doesn't it, Dan?
Yeah, and it clearly shows that he's improving. I mean, you'd expect this with a 23-year-old player. And he probably got the motivation, the fact that he knows he can probably leave a team like Forest in the summer and attract interest from City, as he knows. And also the big factor of the World Cup is this summer. And I think he has a real opportunity to go. I think Tuchel has definitely put him as part of his plans.
Definitely.
So, yeah, I mean, I think if City don't get this deal done, it'd be a very silly thing unless Forest go around asking for hundreds and hundreds of millions, which, I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. But, I really think this deal should be done. I think, considering how well we've done in the last couple of January's windows and summer, I don't exactly think that it'll be a busy window for many other things. So this should be our target, and we should get him as our marquee signing, as you will, and this should be done the second it can be. Whether he wants to wait until after the World Cup, the second England are knocked out, he should be at City the day after. So yeah, no, I think it'd be perfect for Pep. Really, this a perfect little player to come in and replace such a big player as Bernardo Silva. It would maybe be nice, even if Bernardo Silva stays, to bring him in and sort of give him that year to learn the role with him. As Bernardo Silva's body becomes less and less available, and he will start to struggle. To bring a young player in at 23, you can't deny his quality here and his form in a terrible Forest team, realistically. To keep being as good and consistent as he is in the number 6 is brilliant.
Definitely.
Fantastic reading for us.
Definitely. And then when you compare that to Morgan Gibbs-White, they're a lot less consistent. Only 4 green ratings. Anderson had 8 out of 11 and 8 in a row. Morgan Gibbs-White has 2 since the start of the season. It makes a lot less great reading, that, doesn't it, Dan?
Yeah, I think the Morgan Gibbs-White hype train has definitely come, and it definitely came in the summer. I mean, he had a fantastic year last year, and that's where clubs were circling. And that's probably where he probably should have made the move. Obviously, since the team's form has dipped as it was. He's had some very questionable performances. And I've seen Forest when they've been on. And, I just, but where does he fit in this team? Like, I just can't see the area that Gibbs-White will fit in. Especially with being so inconsistent. If you are in that talk of bringing both players in to replace Bernardo is Mr. Consistent. And if this is his form table, he's dropping. Yeah, it's gone back up. You've got to be consistent, and the other thing that we've got to look at is his injury record as well. I think that's starting to creep up on him as well, and the fact that he's 26, as you mentioned, in reaching his pomp years. So we want much time to develop him or shape him or whatever. So it'd be a very drop him in the deep end and see if he sinks or swims, really.
Yeah, he'd have to hit.
Do we want to take that risk? For 70 million, do you? Not really.
Yeah, he'd have to hit the ground running straight away. That is for certain. Gibbs-White average rating in the Premier League this season has been 6.67. If you compare that to last season, it was 7.23. Does that show Forest drop off as a team? Does it show a drop off of him, or what's your thought?
I think it shows both. I think you realistically look at. I mean, Forest were always going to drop off. We're playing Europe. I think they've dropped off a lot more than people have thought. But that is also down to players. You look at like Gibbs-White, who were carrying them last season very hard. He was very good last season. He was very creative. He was doing everything for him at times. But you can't put it down to the drop off of just the team, because if you can see Elliot Anderson there, I mean, he's been absolutely outstanding this season in a fairly terrible Forest team. So there's no excuse for that. And for the price that they'll be asking, I think there's a lot better players out available. Drop a few. I'd much rather see us spend or put a bit of that money towards players like Adam Wharton or Sandro Tonali for a midfield player. I think they'd probably they'd make a lot more sense than Morgan Gibbs-White.
Yeah, definitely. If you look at Elliot Anderson's rating, that is 7.29 in the Premier League this season. And if you compare that to the rest of the league, with players that have played at least half as many appearances as the players with the most appearances, he is in 11th place in terms of SofaScore ratings. Above him, Bruno Fernandes at United, Bruno Guimaraes at Newcastle, Declan Rice at Arsenal, City's Erling Haaland and Rodri, Granit Xhaka at Sunderland, Gabriel at Arsenal, Jean-Paul Van Hecker at Brighton, James Garner at Everton, and Jeremy Doku at Manchester City. Forest's best player by a long way in terms of that. What's your thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I think he is definitely Forest's best and most important player, really. I think if they are to stay up, he'll be a massive role in that. And if they do stay up, that's another massive issue, trying to get him away, because they know how important he is. But yeah, look, he is up there with one of the best players in the league at the minute, especially in that position, shown by his ratings. You can see it just by watching him that he's an absolutely brilliant football player as well. He's there's not many flaws to his game. So yeah, I think it's an absolute no-brainer to go for Elliot Anderson.
Yeah, definitely. Elliot Anderson in that table is 11th. The next best player for Nottingham Forest is Ibrahim Sangare in 49th. So that shows you how good he's been compared to the rest of the team. He has also contributed 1 goal and 2 assists in 27 Premier League starts this season. He's played 2,417 minutes with strong progressive play, a passing accuracy of around 86%, and defensive metrics like duels and tackles that suit City's pressing system. It's just positive after positive after positive for Elliot Anderson here, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, look, I don't want to say anything about it, them going down, but, if they do, I mean, that price as well will come into it. I just think, I don't expect City to do much. I don't want City to do much this summer. I mean, we all like a busy summer window, a big rebuild. Like last summer, you get very excited about players coming in. But I think this year's the year to settle them all in. Maybe add 1 or 2 players, and I think Elliot Anderson is definitely one. We're going to need a midfielder at some point. That midfield is starting to age, needs a bit of a refresh. We're going to look at players such as Mateo Kovacic, Bernardo Silva, etc. That are looking like they could definitely leave. So I will, definitely look to be bringing Elliot Anderson in, even if it is, but I have to buy the bullet and pay 65 to 70 million or whatever they want for him. It'd definitely be worth it. He is a top player, an England international. And will definitely be looked at in a few years as one of the best, I think.
Definitely. And as you've just mentioned there, the price could be a bit of an issue if they stay up, potentially reaching £100 million if they do stay up. That is Forest valuation stance anyway. I'm not sure how true that is. That would strain City's budget, of course. But like you said, there's not much we're going to have to do, to be honest. And rivals like United are also linked. Why you'd want to join them, I don't know. But here we are. He's got a rising market value, of course, but he's still seen as a high potential investment compared to older or more expensive targets, with interest from City positioning us as the favourites at the minute. Some cons then: he has limited top tier experience beyond Forest and has only ever played in the Europa League, European football wise. Never played, I don't think he played at the Euros or in 2024. I don't think he was in the England setup in time for that. And he would have to adapt to City's intense possession stuff, high line, and Champions League football as well, which would require time, wouldn't it, Dan?
Yeah, but I suppose, as I've stated, I suppose we sort of have that time. We have the players around him, or will have the players around him, to help him settle in. We've got the best manager in the world for that, in a way, in my opinion. Um, and I think he is destined to be going on and playing Champions League football, especially if he goes to the World Cup, etc. He's going to want to play Champions League football. I'm not going to doubt his quality. He's good enough to play Champions League football. But yeah, I think it would be quite good as well if we could keep Bernardo Silva for another 12 months on top of what he's got, so we can help him learn the role. We're going to have to probably manage his minutes, but that's just expected. The more time, as we've seen with a few of the signings from a few Januaries ago, the more time on the pitch, on the training pitch, they're obviously doing things, they're working on certain things. You look at players like Kusanov, who many people had written off. All he needs is a couple of months just to work with Pep, just to work in the system, get used to the travel, which I think is a big thing. But I think Anderson is definitely ready for that next step. He's good enough for that next step. And I think that's the issue with most players at his age, is you're not going to have many 22, 23-year-olds that are going to have Champions League experience. And if they are, you're going to be looking at your Pedri, you're going to be looking at Gavi, you're going to be looking at these players that are just so unrealistic. The only other players that you're going to look at with Champions League experience, maybe was some at Newcastle, maybe Bruno Guimaraes or a Tonali or somebody like that. Who, they've played there, but they are, 26, 27, 28. So, it'd be really interesting scenario. I think that's what we need, because we've got time, and we are in the middle of a rebuild at the minute. It might not look it because we're in a title race, but the rebuild is probably half finished, and this next window should be used to help players settle, like Anderson. Get him used to what he's going to be dealing with for the next 10 years. Maybe more focused on outgoings this year, and we'll have plenty of money in January or next summer if need be for big marquee signings.
Definitely. The two Newcastle players you mentioned there, Tonali 25, Guimaraes is 28. So, of course, neither are as young as Anderson. Tonali isn't exactly old, but there's been links with teams like Arsenal, if that's just agent talk, or if he's actually looking to leave Newcastle. And, of course, it's never easy if a team qualifies for Champions League football, which isn't looking likely for Newcastle this season, to be honest. So I think that's basically it. That's covered everything we've needed to with these two players. In an ideal world, Dan, do you sign Anderson? Do you sign Gibbs-White? Do you sign both or neither? And if you sign neither, what other midfielders would you be looking at?
Well, personally, I think I'd stay well clear of Gibbs-White. I think he's a very United-like signing, if you will. A very, it'd be very expensive, very mediocre in a way. So I'd stay well clear of them and let one of our other rivals pick him up. Not feel too bothered about that. Elliot Anderson is a big. You've just got to send it with him. That our entire summer has got to be mainly about him. Maybe use some of that money that we'll probably get for Kovacic or Grealish if he moves on, which is looking like he will. I'd be looking to bring Elliot Anderson in. In an ideal world, you'd be bringing Anderson in. And if Bernardo Silva is to leave, you'd probably bring another midfielder in, and that's where I'd start looking at maybe another big player, because we should have the money with these new deals that we're getting over the line over the last couple of weeks. You'd be looking at maybe Adam Wharton. He'd be brilliant, as you look at the Newcastle boys, you'd look at Bruno or Tonali, who I can see if Newcastle don't qualify, I think there'll be a few in that team looking to leave, including those two, because I don't think I don't think that Bruno Guimaraes or Tonali will look at their quality and look at where they could be and be sat there happily in Kazakhstan on a Thursday night, playing in the Conference League. So I think that'd be a very good opportunity to just, give him a bit of an increase in pay, and then, to give Newcastle an offer and see what they say. So that'd be my ideal transfer window in the midfield area. What about you?
I think Anderson, looking at them numbers, I think you've got to go for him. I think he should be our priority target in the summer. Gibbs-White, similar idea to you. I'm not completely against the signing, but I'm definitely not sold. And when he's been put in this situation of sink or swim for Forest this season, safety on the line, he's not really showed up. Of course, Chris Wood's hardly been playing, but to provide Chris Wood with goals, you've got to be some sort of decent player, because he is absolutely bobbins. So, that's pretty much it from us. Forest fans, let us know what you think. How have these two players looked for you this season? City fans as well in the comments. What is your ideal transfer window midfield-wise? So that is it for this one. On Friday, we will be releasing our top 10 players of the Sheikh Mansour era. And then on Saturday, it is a Leeds preview. Of course, it's Leeds away on Saturday night. So the preview will be out on Saturday morning. Everybody, thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Take care and come on, City. Cheers, guys.